We've decided, in view of the awful situation in Downing Street, that we should invite some of the potential candidates here to speak to us. And we've got two absolute doozies. Cue the music. That was me telling you to play the music.
Stand up for the young boy in his favorite dress. Stand up for the two girls sharing love in bed.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to see you all. Thank you for your love and support. You make everything worthwhile. I'm going to speak about accountability today, then money, and then a few thoughts on FRA, future revolutionary activities. Graham Norton, for those who may not know, is the most famous performer on UK television in the field of light entertainment. That gives him a very large audience indeed. And he's gay and very funny, and everybody loves him, especially on Eurovision Song Contest night. At last week's Cheltenham Book Festival, Graham spoke about cancel culture and mentioned John Cleese. He said, "It must be very hard for a man of a certain age who's been able to say whatever you like for years, and now suddenly there's some accountability there. It's free speech, but not consequence-free." Many have reacted to this by saying, "Okay, this sounds about right." I disagree. Graham, if there are consequences, it is not free speech. If there is accountability, it is not free speech. Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights protects this right, unless someone is actually breaking the law or posing a threat to national security. And freedom of expression was described as the touchstone of all freedoms in the European Convention on Human Rights Travaux Préparatoires, paragraph 119, for those of you who'd like to check. Graham Norton was talking about John Cleese there, but he's advising every single one of us, be careful. Suddenly, there's some accountability there. It's free speech, but it's not consequence-free. Let's have a think about this. First of all, to whom are we accountable? To God, for those who believe in one or many, to our friends, our family, our neighbours, and our fellow human beings? Or does he mean the Twitterati ghouls waiting for another opportunity to excite themselves by abusing complete strangers from the safety of their bedrooms? I don't know what Graham meant, but I do know this: we are accountable to ourselves. That is why Bev and I started LGB Alliance. We could no longer stand by and observe what Graham Norton wants, a world where there is no speech without consequences. This is what we were faced with from 2015 onwards, when Ruth Hunt, CEO of Stonewall at the time, made the decision to abandon the original mission and become an organization devoted to the promotion of gender identity ideology, with one vital proviso: no debate. The people who did oppose this know all about the consequences of speaking out. There is a clear pattern of aggressive behavior designed to suppress and silence dissenters. Let's look at Christine Burns, MBE, the gender identity ideology activist who tweeted, "This is what we should do with these folk. Run them ragged." This is the strategy of the gender identity ideologues, and it is cruel, demeaning, and exhausting. It is meant to destroy our spirit and use up our resources. The process of running us ragged involves public vilification, long drawn-out inquiries, and is itself a major part of the punishment. So let's come back to accountability and ask Graham and his supporters a few questions. Where is the accountability for each of those people who have lost their livelihoods, their reputations, and their health and well-being simply because they state basic facts? Sex is binary, immutable, homosexuality means homosexuality, and children should be left alone to grow up to be whatever they want to be. Where is the accountability for each of us who have received the most obscene, violent, and terrifying threats to our lives and those of our families? Now I want to think about children, young people, and safeguarding. One of my main motivations in setting up LGB Alliance was because I'm certain that if I'd been born in 2004 instead of 1954, I would have believed that I really was a boy and could indeed become one. I would have insisted on the lot, and I am so grateful that instead I was just a bit odd and allowed to grow up to be a fully fledged badge-carrying lesbian. We know that gender identity ideology is nonsense. When people are asked to defend it in public, in detail, they run away. Why? Because there's nothing there. I do not fully understand yet why this ideology has been so popular across the world. Perhaps one day we will know a lot more about the key players driving it. Those who seem to see gender non-conforming children as no more than collateral damage in their obsessive mission to blur all the boundaries put in place precisely to protect children and young people. So I would ask Graham, Norton, and all who support what some may think are his perfectly benign views to think about how they might answer these questions. Who is accountable for taking us back to the 50s with the most regressive and homophobic drive to enforce gender stereotypes? Who is accountable for a generation of children now growing up hating their bodies and being taught at school and online, it's no problem, you can change it? Who is accountable for the medical experiments still being carried out on children using drugs off-label and some of the most hideous surgery imaginable? Who is accountable for the ever-increasing number of detransitioners? Would Graham or his supporters care to sit down and have a chat with Richie or Sinead? Have you read the Cass report, Graham? That's the report into how NHS England and Wales takes care of young people with gender dysphoria. One of Hilary Cass's comments is that safeguarding is everybody's business. We don't need experts or medics here, Graham. Safeguarding is a human responsibility you cannot dodge. I like to believe that you really do care about what is happening to so many confused children and young people, most of whom would grow up to be LGB if left alone. If you're listening, Graham, let's talk. First of all, I'd like you to understand more about what's really happening today and ask yourself whether these are signs of a progressive society or an enormous lurch back to the homophobia of the 50s and before. Think about the real-life consequences of the ideology you support, the reality of transing away the gay. Read up on Dr. David Bell, Graham. These are his words. They're not mine. Is this a good thing? Think about trans joy, photographs glorifying young women with double mastectomies promoted by the publisher of a gutter press publication whose husband was a Mermaids trustee until December 2019. Is this acceptable to you? Lesbians who reject relationships with men who have penises are called bigots, racist, anti-Semites. Does this make sense to you? No lesbian clubs exist in the UK. These are now illegal, not in law, but because of the Japanese knotweed known colloquially as Stonewall Law. Another sign of the lurch backwards is that young lesbians and gays are in the closet now. They're setting up underground networks because they're called transphobic by the Blue Hair Brigade for not wanting sex with straight people. What on earth? LGBT people are thrown out of LGBTQIA plus networks by straights who tell us they're so edgy, they're queer. And we are not welcome. Are these acceptable consequences for you, Graham? Well, they're not for me. I want a future where lesbians, gays, and bisexuals can live our lives as we see fit, not bound by the reactionary homophobia we thought we had left behind years ago. We are called many names, and I do like to live up to my reputation. One accusation is that we're grifters. So now I'm going to spend a few minutes grifting. Please give us money. Any you can spare will help us fight. We know we are blacklisted for grants by the Arts Council, and we believe the same is true of the National Lottery. If you donate each month, we can plan our work much more effectively. We can grow and hire people to get our message out there. We know these are extraordinarily difficult times, but as Vaishnavi says, the house is on fire. Scotland. This isn't about money anymore. Scotland is where the battle lines are most clearly drawn at the moment. After encouraging polls recently showing more people oppose self-ID because they now understand it, we need far more ads, more radio and TV, and we need to do everything we can to stop the ill-thought-out legislation that Shireen spoke about this morning from going through. In Wales, the political leadership refuses to listen to anyone outside their government-funded Stonewall bubble. Let's do everything we can to get our voices heard in the Senedd and shine a light on the appalling capture of Welsh RSE in particular. I am sure Philia will bring a lot of attention to Wales this weekend, and we wish them a fantastic event. And now, my thoughts on Westminster. Well, Boris Johnson's breaking his Caribbean break with a possible return to ABBA parties at number 10. Total chaos for another 2 years, anyone? Or a Labour government. Poor Rosie Duffield will be on our next panel. Let's hear what she thinks we need to do. We do know that many Labour MPs support us, but we know that we're up for a huge struggle to convince the leadership that supporting gay, gutter, press publications who promote self-ID, conversion therapy, and the medicalisation of children is not the way to go. So why the hell did you do that, Keir Starmer? But the point is, LGBT Alliance is not affiliated to any political party. What we do understand, though, is that winning votes is what's important to any political party. Our job is to make it loud and clear to all political parties that the vast majority of the population do not support gender identity ideology, and nor should the Labour Party. Now, I'm on to future revolutionary actions. These are future revolutionary actions of a grassroots movement. So they're very simple and cheap. Some of them need money, but most of them you can do with no money. Number one, keep telling the truth at every single opportunity. So example, having your hair cut, what do? Oh, I run a charity. What charity? LGBT Alliance. Have you heard of it? No. Is it like LGBT? No, it's not like LGBT. Every time somebody asks me what I do, I tell them what I do and why I do it. And you would be surprised how many people say, Oh, that makes perfect sense. Write letters, millions of letters to lawmakers, police, NHS, media outlets, and any public or private organisations spouting gender identity ideology. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. But for God's sake, put them right. Ring up radio stations, get onto TV discussions, we wish. Make videos for TikTok and YouTube. Challenge schools, challenge hospitals, anyone who disobeys the law as it relates to single-sex facilities and RSE. Meet up with like-minded people. This is very revolutionary. Drink coffee or wine, eat, use mobile phones, laugh, laugh, laugh. We have to stay sane in order to keep fighting. And this final one is me speaking to me. Manage your expectations, as Kiri Tunks from Women's Place UK very cruelly said to me once, remember, Kate, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So, to finish, I'm going to quote the words of a really great Prime Minister. The words don't really run together very well at the moment, but I'm going to quote Winston Churchill, short and sweet, KBO. Thank you.
Oh, that was brilliant, Kate. I just have a few things to add. Well, hello. I'm really enjoying myself. I hope you are. I often wear a T-shirt with a quote from Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Well, I'm not sure about the world yet. But I like to think that the small band of volunteers who started with a gathering at Conway Hall 3 years ago, 70 people at Conway Hall, this secret meeting, have done a little to shift public perceptions in the UK. Homophobia is a curse. It's a curse everywhere, whether it's the traditional moralistic homophobia promoted by religious fanatics and other social conservatives, or the newfangled homophobia that markets itself as progressive and inclusive. As Fika has told us, we're in between a rock and a hard place there. Where whatever kind of homophobia it is, it's a curse on societies everywhere. And I cannot tell you how proud I am to have helped to create a small group of volunteers who are fighting it. Earlier, you heard our theme song, or you will be hearing it again. It's a song performed by the Norwegian lesbian band Hungry Hearts. It's called Stand Up. And that is what many of us have been doing, some of us for many years. The first time I stood up was in 1962, when I was 11 years old. An anti-Semitic teacher, after telling yet another anti-Semitic joke, suddenly asked the class, "I don't suppose anyone here is Jewish?" And the class roared with laughter. That was an idiotic idea that there could possibly be a Jewish person in the class. So I put my hand up and I told them. The class responded in stunned silence. And then I rushed out to go to the toilet and throw up. I was terrified, but I had to speak out because it was the truth. That was in many ways the experience that's given me the strength to stand up for the past 3 years and the determination to carry on standing up for LGBT rights. It's not easy to stand up for the sex-based rights of lesbians, gays, and bisexuals today. Some people have lost friends, been abandoned by family members. Others have lost contracts, their job, or even their entire career. It is hurtful to be called a bigot, hateful, or worse, by people you love or once respected. But many of us conclude there's simply no choice. There is too much at stake. As Audre Lorde said, when we speak, we're afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we're silent, we're still afraid. So it's better to speak. And I want to salute every single person in this room and around the world watching on YouTube who has made sacrifices and spoken out. Well done. When we see surgeons advertising double mastectomies as jolly consumer products, and when we see TQ Plus outlets glamorizing pictures of teenagers with the scars from their surgery, when we hear of people ostracizing their fellow students for completely mainstream views, when we see fanatics denouncing a children's author for writing a beautiful little book encouraging small children to love their bodies and to take care of them, we know we cannot, we will not remain silent. Kate has talked about accountability. Those are the people who must be held accountable. It will take time. We must stay the course. We know we're fighting a behemoth of disinformation. It's said that fake news travels 6 times as fast as real news. Most of us have the experience that once we're given an opportunity to explain our concerns, the vast majority of people say, oh, I totally agree with you. But then they often say, but I can't really talk about it because this or that would happen. And in many cases, that is understandable. It is not understandable in people who are in a position of leadership, especially politicians. Our enemies, for we do have enemies, are the ignorance and cowardice of people in positions of leadership. In the current climate, where we're told by people who were not born when we started fighting for LGBT rights that we need to educate ourselves, few leaders dare to brave the storm. Few even take the trouble to look at impartial evidence, such as the interim report from the Cass Review. Those of you who are parents or who have other young people in their lives you care about need to be aware that many of them are growing up online, essentially in another country. You'll be hearing more about that in our final plenary session run by Shay Woolahan and Hannah Borelli. From my days at gay liberation and anti-apartheid to my time campaigning for refugee rights, I was always seen as a firebrand, a loudmouth with too many opinions. Some people may still see me like that. But someone on Twitter recently referred to me as an ultra-pragmatist. I have to admit, I was a bit chuffed. I've become passionate about pragmatism. It's got nothing to do with growing older. It's about the kind of work we're doing, the climate we have to navigate in the world of sex and gender. Those who call us names have adopted lovely-sounding rallying calls. Above all, be kind. Be kind is the best possible advice on how to treat family, friends, people you meet while out and about. But anyone who promotes be kind as a coherent human rights policy is a fool. So, what do I mean by being pragmatic? I obviously don't mean we should ever be disingenuous or what some might call coy. Absolutely not. I mean we should be sensible about how to spend our finite energy. First, who to focus on. Second, which issues to choose. And third, how to approach them. So first, who to engage with. Personally, I don't think there's much point engaging with the small minority who continue to defame us and deliberately misrepresent what we're doing. The crowd who repeat all the old lies about us being far right or straight or puppets funded by the Heritage Foundation, they're not worth our effort. Leave them to their own bubble. Let's focus on the other 95% of the population. We need to be aware that most people are concentrating on what's going on in government, or their energy bills, and the economy in general, on Putin, on the environment, and many other important issues. Most people know nothing about the rights of LGBT people, or where they differ from those of the TQ plus world. This is largely because of the information blackout to which most left-of-centre media have subjected us. And then which issues to choose, with some people pointing out the sheer madness of self-ID in sports like rugby can open up a wider discussion of sex and gender. With others, the best way into this discussion will be reading some of the stories of the tens of thousands of girls and young women raising money on the fundraising platform GoFundMe to have their breasts removed. Or the stories of detransitioners on the detrans subreddit. Finally, how to discuss them. One of the problems many of us struggle with is dealing with anger. I am angry that TQ plus influencers on YouTube are leading young lesbians to think they're really men and encouraging young gay men to think that maybe they're really women. How dare anyone claim it is progressive to display ridiculous diagrams like the genderbread person or rainbow scales ranging from Barbie to G.I. Joe, who still can't identify out of military service, we were reminded a couple of weeks ago. And present these silly diagrams to children for them to define their gender identity. Most so-called liberals in the United States have swallowed the pernicious rubbish that is still being asserted, especially by a hugely profitable medical and pharmacological industry in the United States, that some children are born in the wrong body, and that only cruel, evil people would try to stop them getting the puberty blockers and later surgery, which they call trans healthcare, that they desperately need. The wrong body doctrine makes no more sense than a belief in reincarnation, with apologies to anybody who believes in reincarnation. No one is born in the wrong body. Every man who was once told he was like a girl, and every woman who was told she was not feminine enough, knows this is regressive garbage based on traditional stereotypes, and it makes me furious. Every boy and every girl should be encouraged to develop their own unique personality without labels. That is truly progressive, and those are the values of LGB Alliance. But I think it's often unwise to allow our frustration about people's ignorance and our anger at the huge injustices being perpetrated in the name of so-called progressive policy to dominate when first explaining our positions. Some of us have been studying sex and gender issues for years, and the gap in information between us and those we're talking to is enormous. It's often necessary to start slowly with just one issue. What makes the biggest impression is personal stories, preferably your own. Share those stories. I started by talking about the potential of a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens. Every single person listening to this can form a group. Every person has a different contribution to make. As Kate has said, you may be good at writing letters. There are many people you can write to, including the media, including your MP, your school, your church leader. If you have a personal story, do communicate it to your MP. It makes a lot of difference. We often hear an MP saying, I have a constituent who suffered this and that. It's important. Get those stories out there. You may decide to start up a podcast or a YouTube channel. There are many, many different things you can do depending on your own particular skills, what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, or you may simply make a point of talking to the people you meet when you take the dog out. Every determined person can achieve enormous change. You don't even need a group to be effective in joining the struggle to stop the erosion of the rights of lesbians, gays, and bisexuals, but you do need one faithful friend with whom you can share the enormous ups and downs of this work and who will never let you down. And Kate and I have been incredibly fortunate in this respect. What a partnership. If you're lucky enough to find such a friendship, nothing can stop you. So thank you, Kate. And I also want to thank some other people. I want to thank our managing director, Kate Barker, our chair of trustees, Eileen Gallagher, our organisational wizard, Kerry Mullin. There are many, many, many other names I should mention. I want to thank the entire team, LGB team, of all the dedicated volunteers we have managed to gather around us, incredible people. And thank you to everyone who donates to LGB Alliance or helps us in any way, and to everyone unable to attend this conference but who support us from around the world. We could not do this work without you. Thank you. She always has to have the last word.
If two old lesers like us can do something like this, think of what each of you can do.